challenges.
I'm excited about being here.
I am a doctor in the making.
I'm here to explore the unknown.
All I know is this is where I want to be.
I'm here to get the single best education ever invented.
I'm here to develop myself in ways I can't even imagine.
This journey makes me feel grateful.
I am Brazilian.
I'm Israeli.
I'm from China.
I am Canadian.
We basically pushed the reset button. We said, it's 21st century. What can we do that's different, that hasn't been possible? So, from my point of view, content is a vehicle for teaching them tools they can use for the rest of their lives to keep adapting, keep learning, keep growing.
This was kind of my dream school. It felt like I dreamed how my ideal school would be, and then all of a sudden it existed.
I'm just unbelievably privileged to be in this position, to have these opportunities, to be a founder.
You look around at the other people and you feel like it's this unique combination of our minds will create the first layer of student body in Minerva.
I'm so excited that there are people trying to create a revolutionary education system.
The fact that this is a new educational institution, essentially teaching you how to think critically, which to me means being able to think for yourself.
I've always enjoyed those times in my life when I have the freedom to create my own schedule, to pursue my own interests, and I think Minerva does exactly that. It gives me that freedom.
Minerva is designed to be a university as it should be, not as how it accidentally evolved into being.
I wanted to be somewhere that challenges me daily, and I was pretty confident Minerva would be that.
When I chose the name Minerva, she was the goddess of wisdom. It was an easy choice, because we want to teach the concept of critical wisdom, actually take analytical tools and use them to make the world a better place.
We're going to call each of you forward to receive one of these symbols of your legacy at Minerva.
And Minerva, much like any school, is not meant for everyone. Do I want to have an experience where I'm not going to be on a campus, where I'm actually going to use cities around the world as my campus? Do I want to go to university where no matter what country I come from, I will be in the minority? There is no majority student. These are very hard questions that students have to ask themselves.
Minerva is diverse from all of its aspects. It just fits with the 21st century. It brings students from all cultures and get them to live in many different cultures.
We're all very driven in our own area, and we have common goals that we want to achieve.
There's not a single moment in class where you can actually doze off and daydream, where every single moment you are participating in the learning process.
We've hit on something really new, which we're calling fully active learning, where everyone is engaged and everyone is involved. So what we're trying to do is have each session be fully active learning.
Think of the fanciest version of Google Hangouts or Skype, designed to be a classroom. That's what it is.
It's very different than a traditional classroom, but in a way it's what a traditional classroom distilled down to its purest form, I feel like, would look like.
You are not a passive recipient of your education, you're actually active in it. You are debating and challenging your teacher and your peers.
The founding class is in many ways more than a dream come true. These students aren't just brilliant, and they're not just students who are pioneers and are willing to take risks, but they are thoughtful. When you take incredibly talented students who at the same time are very hardworking, you wind up finding students who are also humble. And that humility is such a wonderful thing to see when they've all come together as a class. It's one of the reasons why students from 14 different countries have immediately gelled. They don't let their talent overshadow the fact that they really need to invest in order to do something important in the world.
There's all these trigger words. Traveling 7 different cities, living in San Francisco.
I think it's such a great feeling. It's I wake up every morning thinking what I'm doing here is important and could potentially shape the outlook of higher education.
At the core of Minerva is fluidity. I think that is Minerva's integrity. If it can uphold that promise that as the world changes, we will change. It's your opportunity to tell us how we need to change because you're the next generation. You're experiencing the world in a different way.
I'm alive.
I am an optimistic realist. I am exploring, founding. I'm a changer.
I'm a Minerva student.
Eu sou aluno da Minerva.
Yo soy un estudiante de Minerva.
我是个来自密涅瓦大学的学生。
I'm a student of the world.
Are you a student of the world?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. It's a little bit interesting that the purpose of my talk today is about education and not about technology. After all, this is an e-learning conference. It's about technology and what technology can do for education. But I think that it's more important to think about education more broadly. And only after we have a discussion about what education should be, then we can think about what technologies can be helpful in bringing it about. When you think about most innovative organizations that make truly impactful changes on the world, they rarely think about a technological solution as the starting point. They rarely say, well, I have developed a technology. Now, what can I use to put that technology against? What can I utilize this technology for? But that's, in fact, how most of educational technology works. People develop a technology, whether it's a massive open online course, or an adaptive learning program, or learning analytics. And then they say, well, I have a tool here. And now, what can I apply this tool to? How do I take my technology and use it to enhance, distribute, improve, make more efficient what universities currently do? But there's a problem. The problem is that what universities currently do isn't good. It's not sufficient. And the reason we know that comes both from empirical evidence as well as pure logic. But should education be doing something different? Well, this question was grappled with about 250 years ago in the United States. At the time, the United States were part of the British Empire. And the individuals that would become the founding fathers of this new country started thinking about what a society that isn't inherited should look like. Under the British Empire, in monarchic systems and systems of monarchy, you would be very well determined, meaning that when you were born, you knew what you would do as an adult. If you were the son or daughter of the king or queen, you would be born to rule. If you were the son of the blacksmith, you would be a blacksmith. Son of a barber would be a barber, etc. There wasn't a great deal of mobility from one circumstance to another.
in the society that the founding fathers of the United States envisioned, and in fact, the society that we have today almost all over the world, your birth does not determine your future. Well, let me take a quick survey here. How many of you here in the audience are today in the career that your mother or father had at this time of their life? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 2 out of 1,000. This is the vision of the founding fathers of the United States. The impact of their vision is what you all are experiencing here in Korea. A society of self-determination, a society of mobility. Let me ask another question. How many of you in this room, when you were 18 years old, studied how to do the job that you are doing today? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Twice as many as those of you who had the jobs of your parents, but still less than 1% of you. And so their conception of what a university should be was a university to develop the whole person. Some of the founding fathers called practical knowledge, others called useful knowledge. And this idea was radical. So radical, in fact, that the founding fathers had no idea how to implement it. And the closest that universities got to fulfilling their vision was known as the Great Books Program. Universities would select a series of texts, usually written by, in fact, almost all, or all of them written by white men who had then died, so would have been long dead at the time. So everyone from Aristotle, Plato, Shakespeare, and they would read these great works in the hopes that the lessons of the giants, the lessons of history, will be able to be learned by students and then applied to any form of career that they would pursue, especially those careers that would contribute directly to society, being in government, being in service to other citizens. Now, this is a nice attempt, but unfortunately it's quite flawed. And it's flawed because, and this was not known at the time, the mind is quite bad at a thing called far transfer. Far transfer means that you learn a concept in one context and then can originally find a different context and apply it correctly. Right? I'll give you an example. Many people who study economics study the concept sunk costs. But remarkably, when the same individuals have, let's say, a relationship with another person where they've invested a lot of energy and time and sometimes money in the past, and the relationship has never reciprocated. They've never gotten back from that person any kind of support or investment in return. They oftentimes forget the lesson of sunk costs. They don't know how to translate a pure economic lesson to interpersonal relationships. And in fact, sunk costs would be useful for people to remember when they legislate in politics, when they operate on a person on a table if they're doctors. It can be found similar concepts like sunk cost in biology. But when you learn about sunk costs in context, it turns out to be very difficult to apply that context that concept in other contexts. So you have to understand how systems work and interaction effects. And then, because we all live in the world, with society, with other people, you have to then figure out how do you implement and communicate well with other people in order to make these ideas, these solutions, into reality. How do you communicate well or interact well with other people? And so what you do is create a curriculum that purposefully introduces and then repeats and applies these types of concepts in multiple contexts over and over and over again until the mind internalizes these ideas, develops the habits, and deeply understands the generative concepts, the concepts from which other ideas can grow, such that people can originally apply them. So that's solution number one. Sounds easy. Not easy. And so we designed an entire system that is built to ensure that every student is participating at all times and that student progress is tracked and that progress is then fed back to professors in an easy, digestible way so that they can manage their class better, ask the right students the right time, right, for the right type of question. How do we do that? First, it starts with the curriculum itself. We designed a curriculum centrally that has different component parts. A set of courses taught by different professors to introduce each of these habits and concepts, and then begin the process of transferring. Right? That takes approximately a year, 2 semesters, 8 months, for 4 different professors to enable a student to actually go through that process. Then, a set of additional courses that are more subject matter oriented that exercise these habits and concepts in a more particular set of disciplines, be they the natural sciences, the social sciences, business, arts and humanities, computational sciences broadly. Then, a set of courses that look at the intersection of fields and again, apply these habits and concepts in ways and areas where discovery is being created. At the edge of knowledge. Then, we offer students a year where they themselves effectively design their education, which is then facilitated by our professors and is almost fully personalized. That process enables students to go from the very beginning of their journey in trying to master these habits and concepts, and then have the spaced repetitive practice that is necessary for those ideas to cement in their minds. Pedagogically, we ensure that there is a camera that is pointed at every student's face at all times. We have an institution which is residential. Students all come from all over the world and they live together. All of their classes are done online because we want to make sure that students have the data around what they say and the evaluation of what they say that feeds in to a larger database, an algorithm, in fact, that enables the professor to know who to call on and when. That algorithm then takes into account how much is each student struggling with each piece of information, habit or concept that we try to teach, how many contexts they've actually applied those habits and concepts in, all the way down to how much they've actually been talking. Another thing that isn't particularly useful when it comes to this form of education is not giving students the ability to apply what they've learned. One of the most useful ways of teaching useful knowledge, practical knowledge, is to actually allow students to apply it in real-world situations. And so a big part of our institutional design is to ensure that students live in the real world. Our students live in San Francisco, where we're based, for their first year.
This is Nancy. Waking up in San Francisco feels so great. It's going to be a long day ahead. This is Zoe. It is 7 a.m.
Day in the life.
Oh my God, it's 7 a.m.
A day at Minerva is unexpected, but also challenging and rewarding.
It is 9:20 and I'm going to take my first class of the day.
They admitted frequency-dependent selection, which is the same thing we talked about with evolutionary game theory.
I didn't know what I was going to do until Minerva came along. There was this amazing opportunity that I couldn't deny myself of.
Making the decision to come to Minerva was extremely difficult for me because I had other options. Now that I'm here, I feel like this is the perfect place for me.
I don't think I've ever experienced so much personal and intellectual growth in such a short period of time.
We are about to walk to Pier 33 to get on a boat to go to Alcatraz.
Chinatown. We are in Alcatraz Island in a prison. There's an art exhibition by Ai Weiwei.
We have just toured this exhibition with this huge kite, and right now we're trying to create our own kites and design it in a way that relates to our own concept of freedom.
That's freedom in Arabic.
When we look at the city as our campus or the world as our campus, as students we ask ourselves, how do we make this community a better place?
Live Memorial Church offers the opportunity for citizens to volunteer serving food to the homeless. I'm just always amazed at how this place can mean so much to so many people.
We're about to visit the Mayor's Office of Civic Innovation.
For the past 3 years, I've been the mayor's point person on homeless policy.
Minerva's a lot about applying what you're learning. You have this curriculum which is teaching you all how to think critically, how to communicate, how to interact with people.
Co-curriculars get students out into the city and you're actually understanding the practical applications of what you're learning.
1001 is the first Minerva tradition. Every Sunday we get together and we make food, and someone is the host every week and they will make food from their country. Normally it's a traditional dish.
This is Nigeria completely. It's very spicy. I cannot make suya without spice.
The fact that at Minerva we don't have physical campus allows us to really utilize the city. I find that extremely rewarding.
When you go to each city for a new semester, it's like you're getting a key to the city.
The city is your campus, so just come and explore.
It's finally time to go to bed.
And they live in residence halls in the middle of the city. No campus. No cafeteria, no climbing gym, no sports fields, no campus museums, because we have real restaurants and supermarkets and real parks and real museums, right? And we make sure that our students integrate into that city and live there as residents. And then we ensure that they transfer those practical ideas from one culture, the culture of the United States, to several others. And in fact, they begin their journey right here in Seoul. They spend 4 months in Seoul, followed by another 4 months in Hyderabad in India, then 4 months in Berlin, 4 months in Buenos Aires, 4 months in London, and 4 months in Taipei, before coming back to San Francisco for a month where they graduate and manifest everything that they've learned in their capstone project, which they present during that month. That idea of moving students from context to context is another example of transfer. It's another example that allows students to practice this useful or practical knowledge in very different circumstances, which then, of course, allows them to originally apply it no matter where they wind up living in the future. That also means that the institution itself should probably rethink what it is that it's spending money on. We as an institution will never spend money on buildings, perhaps outside of places for students to live. We will not build cafeterias or gyms. We will not build labs. We will not build professor offices. We spend all of our resources on providing students the educational and support infrastructure they need to be successful. That's it. And so we can deliver a higher quality education than exists anywhere in the United States for a fraction of the price. Now, how do I know that it works? How do I know that we're succeeding? Luckily, there is an organization in the United States called the Collegiate Learning Assessment. They put together a test. And this test, the CLA+, which is quite well known in education circles, tests a few things that we, again, all know universities should be teaching. It tests how well does somebody think critically, how well do they problem solve, scientific reasoning, and effective communication, primarily written and reading communications. And what the way CLA is administered is you administer initially when students come in as first-year students, and then you administer at the end of their 4 years. And you see how universities progress students along these paths. Now, it turns out that most universities don't progress students very much at all. There's some progress, especially from universities that work with students that test relatively low at the beginning and manage to show some progression over time. Now, we select students that come from the very top. And so when you look at the CLA results of our students coming in, they're at the 96th percentile of incoming freshmen, right? So they're very much at the top. And of course, we don't, nor does any university, screen students based on these criteria, which is one of the reasons why they're relatively effective at measuring before and after. Now, we have not yet had students that have graduated. We haven't had students that have spent 4 years with us. And so we decided to see what would happen if we would give them the same test, or the graduating test, not at the end of 4 years, but at the end of 1 year. So 8 months after coming to Minerva. Now, you would imagine somebody that comes into the 96th percentile doesn't have much room to grow, right? However, when you look at their test results coming in, compared to the test results of the graduating seniors, they're at the 78th percentile, right? Which makes sense, right? They're excellent students. Many universities don't teach efficacy in these areas. And so they're better than the majority, but they still have quite a bit of headroom to go, right? So they come in at the 78th percentile. By the end of 8 months, when they take that test again, our students test at the 99th percentile of graduating seniors. Not only do they test at the 99th percentile, They have the highest test scores of any graduating class that the CLA has ever tested. And so what we've been able to do with this curriculum and this pedagogy in 8 months is to demonstrate a better ability to teach critical thinking, creative problem solving, scientific analysis, and effective communications than any university in the United States has ever been able to demonstrate in 4 years of education. That should give you all pause. It should give you further pause and to realize, or when you realize, that we've gotten these results on our first attempt. It's our first try. Think about what Minerva education will look like 20 years from now, when we've iterated over and over and over again, optimized every single lesson of every single class. Think what it'll look like 3 years from now or 2 years from now when our first students graduate. And at what kind of advantage these students will have compared to any other student in the world. This is not good. This isn't so much to say of how great we are, because on anybody's first attempt, you shouldn't get results like this. It is actually a reflection of the deep-rooted problems of the current system.
Typical day in Berlin.
I would either go for a run or spend an hour trying to learn German.
I try to venture into the other neighborhoods. I somehow always end up back in the Mower Park flea market.
I bike around to different places in the city and then go to class at 1 p.m.
Berlin embodies a lot of the things San Francisco strives for, especially in regards to finding your niche.
Everyone's doing their own thing, and people are very laid back. They're living their lives in a very meaningful way.
People have the time and take the time to make mistakes, to experiment, but at the same time, they have a goal.
This is the old world. It has a much longer history than San Francisco. But more importantly, I think for our students, it's a shift in their education. We have 120 sophomores here in Berlin. We have 4 colleges in arts and sciences and a business college. Students can take classes ranging from arts and society to computational and mathematical modeling. In Berlin, they're starting to explore their own deep topic they thought they wanted to study.
We're trying to bridge curriculum and the city. We try to get students immersed in experiential learning. We're facing students with reality versus the models that they are learning. We want to build that bridge from where they are to the next place.
So it was a very different chemical composition.
First year cornerstone courses at Minerva really gave us a good foundation to understand deeper knowledge.
I can sense that I think differently. What Minerva's changed the most is my own definition of success. I'm more willing to take a stab at things and be open to the possibility that I might fail.
I've always been a rebel. I've always wanted to do something that was different. Minerva definitely opens up the possibilities. I start thinking more about what I really want instead of just following the path that other people follow. There's something very special about Minerva students. They're not just smart, they're very curious about the world.
They are really confident in who they are and what their quirks are, and excited about what their futures hold. To see people encouraging each other to be more of that is really powerful.
So we made some really good dishes that you guys I think are going to enjoy very much. I spent 2 hours on the salad just letting you know.
In Berlin, you're able to build towards a more important challenge. This is the place where the energy comes from that allows them to explore and push their boundaries.
There are infinite directions that you can create.
I can't imagine what it'll be like when I'm in Seoul or when I'm in London. There's so much in the world to do and so much thing to see.
Hello, my name is John Lee. Currently, I'm a student at EU High School. I think you know. I skipped today's class just to see you here and listen to your speech. But unfortunately, on the other side of myself, I felt kind of frustrated while listening to your speech. Because not all the students get the chance to experience Minerva-style education. And I just want to ask that what kind of problem that Minerva wants to solve in education, and can it also be the solution to end the highly competitive society of Korean education? I understand. I hope you understand my question, and look forward to discuss it together. Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's an excellent point, and I'll address it in two separate ways. First and foremost, about just the practical nature of the admissions process. One of the things which was crucial for when we set up the institution of Minerva is that we approached admissions in a very different perspective. And so admissions to practically every single other highly selective university in the world is exactly as you've described. You have to compete with all of these other people, trying to look better than them on a comparative basis. We do not have that concept at Minerva. Minerva has no concept of spots in the class. We in fact accept 100% of qualified students. And we have no balancing of any kind. So we don't have a quota for men versus women. We don't have a quota for Americans versus Koreans. We don't have a quota for rich versus poor, etc. And so what happens, because we admit purely based on merit, is that the Minerva student body is by far the most diverse student body in the world. Less than 20% of our students are from the United States, even though we're an American university. We have students that are far more representative of the socioeconomic distribution in the world than any other elite university in America, primarily because universities in the United States discriminate, even though they claim they don't. Statistically, you can prove that they do. And so when you think about the entry process, application process into Minerva, you are evaluated purely against absolute standards. Now, the standards are extremely high, but you are not at a disadvantage or an advantage from when of competing with particular students from your school. So as an example, I think 2 years ago, there was one school in China where we admitted 6 students from that one school the same year when we admitted 1 student from all of Greater Beijing, right? And so it has nothing to do with anything except the merit of the individual. Now, that is still can't solve all of the problems of global higher education. But what Minerva is meant to do as an institution, more importantly than educating students directly, is to demonstrate to every other university that their educational process is just unacceptable. It is not acceptable for the world's great universities to have such lower outcomes than a brand new institution. Doesn't make any sense. And so we exist first and foremost to inspire other institutions to reform. And my bet is that in societies like Korea, you're going to have that reform happen much faster than in societies that are less focused on education. I think the culture of education in Korea is so strong And I think one of the reasons why we chose Seoul as one of the cities that we're visiting or that we're resident in is that I think our entire model and the results speak for themselves and will be adapted in places like Korea much faster than some other countries in the world.
Thank you very much. Any other question?
대단히 감사합니다. 한국 사람들이 이 영어 듣는 게 힘드니까 이번에는 한국말로 해서 저 사람이 좀 어렵게 질문을 하려고 합니다. 특히 우리 한국의 경우도 새로운 무슨 아이템을 정말 고등교육이 됐든 K-12 교육이 됐든 그런 걸 하기 위해서 노력들을 하는 분들이 꽤 많은데 그게 법 제도나 이런 그 시스템적으로 안 되는 경우가 꽤 많거든요. 그래서 질문은 미네르바 대학을 그렇게 성공적으로 이끌기 위해서 어떤 거를 어떻게 넘었는지 그런 거에 대한 어떤 인사이트를 주신다면 대단히 감사하겠습니다. 저는 방송통신대학교에서 온 손진권입니다.
Wonderful. Yes, that's actually I didn't talk about that at all, but it's a great question. The secret to Minerva's success is not that we just created a better educational system on the one hand, we created a better service, better product. But actually on the other hand, we also played the game. We did what every other university does, and we did it better. And so, as an example, in the United States, to be an accredited degree, to actually offer an accredited 4-year degree, you have to offer 120 credit units worth of time. There's a seat time requirement. Now, we as a new institution, a new program could say, oh, 120 doesn't make sense. It should be 108. It should be 150. It should be 87. But we didn't fight those fights because it doesn't matter. 120 is a container. And you say, okay, well, you want me to be 120 credit units? I'll be 120 credit units. And I'll fit within that concept, right? A lot of the prestige that comes from American universities comes from the acceptance rate, which is kind of a silly concept and all the rest. And so we had to make sure that we got a lot of applicants from all over the world. So as an example, from in our third class that is just starting in San Francisco this week, we received for a third class ever 20,400 applicants from 179 different countries. So that means that we received for a third class more applications than Dartmouth, which is a 250-year-old Ivy League university, or MIT this year, right? And we accepted less than 2% of those individuals, right? We are the most selective university in the United States. Now, again, we accept all qualified applicants, right? 100%. But we have so much demand, so much interest, that we are able to maintain very, very high standards, right, and make sure that the ones we select are befitting of that perspective. And so we play the same game that other universities do, and we make sure that when we offer our degrees, they're the same number of credit hours, you can do the same majors, or it's a Bachelor of Art or a Bachelor of Science, depending on what you major in. It's 4 years, it's accredited. We're part of the Claremont system, where Pomona and Claremont McKenna and Harvey Mudd are. And so we have all of the basics that make sure that we look and are as legitimate as any other institution. And then we have the curriculum and the pedagogy to ensure that we do a better job. And so the problem with most educational reforms movements in the past is that they rejected the system. And then they jumped up and down, said, look at me, I'm outside the system, bring the system down. And we don't do that. We say, we think the system should survive, we think it should thrive, and we will show you how you can change inside the system. Looks exactly the same, but have much better outcomes. And that's I think, why we hope that this reform movement will be successful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is not giving students the ability to apply what they've learned. Useful ways of teaching useful knowledge, practical knowledge, is to actually allow students to apply in real-world situations. We approach education through a system that we refer to as fully active learning. You foreground the habit or concept as opposed to the subject. How do you teach generalizable practical knowledge? Well, the answer is very straightforward.